Hello, and welcome to the Monster Painter. This week, we are delving into the Dungeon Dwellers. So let's take a look at these guys before we put the primer on them. So the ones that I got a bit of a faint paint job, I'm going to use a clear gesso primer in an effort to restore them to their original early 80s glory. And the other four are just going to get slapped with some white gesso. And that's where we're going to start with these venerable old fellows. And here's one of the miniatures with the clear coat, ready to paint. And then there's this guy. He missed the group shot, but I found him hiding on the shelf. So he got primed up, and he's going to get done too. All right, I'm a little nervous, but here it goes. 2 weeks ago, I purchased a bag of miniatures, a jobber lot, a mess of a bag. I did a whole video about it, and the set of Dungeon Dwellers was one of the grand treasures within the bag, including some other things, some really nice old Raw Partha models. But these ones really caught my attention, and they really bring me back to those old days, back in the early 80s when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with my buddies in my parents' basement. They really evoke that old classic Dungeons and Dragons feel. These guys look like authentic adventurers out to purge the dungeon of horrible monsters and gather the loot and save the kingdom from evil and all that fun. And yeah, I couldn't resist them. Had to paint them up. The Dungeon Dwellers were produced by Heritage Miniatures, later Heritage USA, a company founded by Jim Oden in 1974 at the start of the first great RPG boom. The hobby was very different back then. 40K wouldn't be born for more than a decade, Warhammer Fantasy hadn't been conceived of yet, and tabletop wargaming was largely dominated by historic battles, primarily those centered around the Napoleonic era. But the unprecedented success of Dungeons & Dragons brought in a new avenue into miniature gaming, and the dungeon crawl was born, and it's been a lot of fun ever since. In the late 70s, Heritage Miniatures failed to secure the rights to produce an advanced Dungeons & Dragons line for TSR. That plum would go to Grenadier. Undaunted, they went ahead and produced the proposed line as the now legendary Dungeon Dwellers. And they were fantastic, and they were everywhere. They're these excellent models evocative of true adventurers, were very popular. But alas, by 1983, Heritage, then known as Heritage USA, went belly up, and the line went out of production. To be reborn once again in the early 90s, as the fledgling Reaper Miniatures acquired the rights, they began producing the Dungeon Dwellers with simpler bases that conformed more with the rest of the Reaper line. These old sculptures, however, were later retired after being overtaken by the immensely popular Reaper line of Dark Haven miniatures, which those things are fantastic. I love the Dark Haven line. As of late, Reaper offers a new line of Dungeon Dwellers, many of which are modern sculpts inspired by these old classics, and they very successfully channeled this old school vibe. New castings of these old classics can be acquired from Classic Miniatures, a hobby enterprise that specializes in the old sculpts, particularly focusing on the rarer ones, but you can certainly find most of the Dungeon Dwellers there in beautifully done new castings. Generally, the Dungeon Dwellers are not particularly rare, and with a little patience, you can dig on eBay and other such sites and find them for under $10 a pop. But be careful, there are scalpers out there, and if you want them in their original blister pack, you're going to pay for it. Now, like I said, I love these guys. They bring me right back to those endless summer days in the 80s playing Dungeons and Dragons in my parents' basement with my buddies. And so this nostalgia meter is cranked up to 11. Now, while these sculpts are detailed and charming, they're certainly not up to modern standards, but more importantly, they really look like adventurers, and that's pretty cool. This lot is destined for my favorite game, Frostgrave. I can definitely see using the cleric and the monk as a thaumaturge and apprentice, while the wizard and the priestess are definitely going to get work as spellcasters. And there are plenty of other roles for the others in a warband. These lads are definitely going to see some new adventures in the frozen city of Old Felstad. And here they all are, all finished up in their new paint jobs, ready for future adventures. And they're looking pretty good to me, you know. They're not bad, not my best work. Certainly not at the level of, say, Frank Weaver. But they're not bad. If you like old miniatures painted up, I would recommend you check out the Old School Miniatures group on Facebook. There are some masters creating wonderful works with old-timey miniatures on that group. So go give it a look. Next week on The Monster Painter, we take a look at the diesel punk fun of Battleship Galaxies. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
You are watching Les the Monster Painter.